All right, so we're gonna watch another quick video. I'll tell you a little bit about it. I like showing it. It's a really old video. So this is a severed femoral artery, depiction on a pig. And what I want you to think about is, obviously with a pig, the blood pressure, the normal blood pressure is lower than a human. The pulse rate is lower. And then in order to do these videos, like for medical, studying this kind of stuff, they medicate, they sedate the animal and all that stuff. So that affects bleeding. That affects how this model is going to respond to a severed femoral artery. Does that make sense? So as we watch this, I'm going to tell you a few things about it and talk through it. But I want you to understand, think about, the average size human being, blood pressure, pulse rate, probably the scariest, worst time of their life, whether it's a gunfight or they're bleeding to death or whatever. Blood pressure's through the roof. Mine's controlled with medication right now, so I'm good for a little while. And then your pulse rate is through the roof. It's just like shooting, right? Oh, get your breathing, get all your techniques down, and even though I'm scared to death and my heart rate's 140, I can hopefully still, make accurate shots on my target. Well, it's the same kind of thing with this. Your heart rate's gonna be up. And in this video, I want you to watch when Joel hits play, it's gonna spurt out. Now in here, it's spurting like 6 inches or so. If it happened to one of us in like the worst scenario of our life, it's probably gonna shoot like 6 feet. If it's actually severed and open, wide open. And if it doesn't shoot 6 feet, like if it's a large vessel, depending on, how the injury pattern is, it will just flow out constant, like we saw in the videos, right? That's that constant flow. That's not gonna stop until the container's empty. So when we get a hole in the container, when we lose so much out of the container and our blood pressure gets to a certain point, we have receptors in our body that go, hey, and tell the brain, kick up that heart rate, man. We got to get that blood pressure back up, or we're going to pass out. Everybody realize that when somebody passes out, it's usually the body trying to save itself. Your blood pressure is getting so low. I mean, it doesn't take into account that you could crack your head on the concrete ground and die from that, but it's trying to lay you down and get your blood pressure, level you out and get your blood pressure normal again so you stay conscious. Well, it's kind of like a negative feedback thing. If the blood pressure starts going so low and it kicks up the heart rate, but the hole's not plugged yet, what's happening? We're losing blood at a fast rate. I just want you to understand that. That's why we go for the bleeders first. We have to go for the bleeders first and try to control them right away. So we'll just walk through this, and when you watch it, it's gonna spurt, and then it's gonna slow and flow, then it's gonna spurt again. That is, you can see the compensation. The body is trying to compensate and save itself. Now, once we lose enough out of the container, we're gonna be like the knife injury patient. Just go unconscious and lay there until we die. There's no blood left in the body. See that slowing, and then it starts spurting again? The first 1 or 2 times it's pretty good, but then it'll start losing. You see how it can't quite get back to its original pressure? And then Dr. Kevorkian comes in and But did you notice that? That's what's happening in our bodies. That is what would happen. That's kind of what happened to that guy. It wasn't spurting out, but it was flowing enough. If he was laying on the ground and that wound was kind of compressed a certain way, it probably would have been squirting out. If he was laying on it, would have been squirting up in the air, okay? And some bleeders like that, initially, you put your hand on that, or both hands on that, and it feels like a little pressure nozzle on the hose. I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure coming out of those vessels. And what happens when we go in the gym and we work out? I don't know, because I don't do that anymore, but what happens to our muscles? and they start getting fatigued, right? They fill with blood, and at a certain point, they start getting fatigued. Well, when a body's going through that, the vessels, do you think that they get fatigued that same way? There is so many different things going on during this process. The body can only hold up for so long. Yes, a certain amount of blood in the container, depending on somebody's physical condition, can they even live through this period? How will they respond to it? Some people would take an injury like that and just go unconscious, they wouldn't, psychologically, whatever, their body will not respond the same as somebody that's constantly training and their body's in better shape. They may last a little bit longer, give them a little bit more time conscious to get the tourniquet on, but that's pretty much what's happening. All right, guys, we're gonna talk through, I wanna go over the tourniquets. If I hand all these tourniquets out, you know what's gonna happen? I don't know why. Even if I said, hey, don't touch your tourniquet, somebody would be back there like, they just have to do it. So what we're gonna be working with today is the CAT tourniquet, Combat Application Tourniquet. Is everybody familiar with it? Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Blue ones are training tourniquets. This can't be good for the video. Blue ones are training tourniquets. Orange and black are operational. Does that make sense? Initially, when we got them, I want to say March of 2004 in Afghanistan, we got a shipment of tourniquets in, and it was awesome, Well, we didn't know what they were. I was an 18 Delta, and we were, highly trained, but we didn't have commercial grade tourniquets on our first trip over there. So we used cravats or triangular bandages, and we would drill holes in wooden dowels and use the wooden dowel as a windlass, and it worked awesome. And we would make up like 3 or 4 of them and have them laid out in our bag, and then make 2 and have them in our cargo pockets, and it worked. It worked really well. I wish I would have thought about this. I would have had my own private plane now, or something, but just not that smart. So the commercial grade tourniquet, over the years, it was great because we started really analyzing, not we, but in general, the whole population, special operations, the military, they dove into this and started really, evaluating and analyzing what was going on with bleeding control. And what they find is we were not doing effective bleeding control, not back in World War II, not in Vietnam. And so why are we going into Somalia, like Mogadishu, like Black Hawk Down? Why do we still not know how to do this really well? What's going on? And it was because, they kind of just left it at bay, and it is what it is, right? And then when they saw in Mogadishu, we lost a lot of good guys, and they started figuring out, wow, we really don't know. We're not very good at this. We need to work on this. So we started really working on bleeding control. And then we started seeing the commercial grade tourniquets come out. Like I said, I think for me personally, it was March of 2004. We were in Afghanistan, about halfway through a rotation, and we got a box, and they were black, and they were CAT tourniquets. It was like generation 1. And honestly, we didn't know what they were. I was like, look at these awesome straps. And we started screwing them to the roof of the truck. We were strapping weapons with them. I mean, honestly, nobody really knew exactly what they were at the time. And then we get a message that hey, these awesome commercial grade tourniquets, do you like them? And we're like, they're great, they're really great. But a lot of things about the CAT, this is a generation 7. And if you have a generation 6, it still works. It's a little, some of the parts and pieces are a little bit more narrow and not quite as strong and reinforced. And there's a double opening in the buckle. Is everybody familiar with that? Most people in here familiar with the CAT tourniquet? So the generation 6 and all the others before that had a buckle so you could actually go through. And if you didn't get enough Velcro done, it wouldn't matter. You couldn't pull that thing out because it was through a buckle. But the Gen 7 is reinforced, and because it only has one opening in the buckle, it's considered faster, I love the CAT tourniquet. I've used a whole bunch of different ones, commercial grade tourniquets. What I love about the CAT tourniquet is how effective and efficient it is for self-application. If I'm going to apply it to myself and I'm going to carry a tourniquet, this is the one I've wanted to carry and that I have carried. And also, it's very, very effective because it has this tensioning ribbon. Everybody familiar, if you're familiar with the tensioning ribbon, it's connected at the top, it runs through the windlass, and then it free floats all the way down through the strap and it's attached in the bottom here. So what that allows this tourniquet to do is, if I was to put it on my arm, and what's my placement? High and tight. And I also like to pull the red tip towards the center of my body. If I pull it this way, with one pull, I can get it almost all the way cinched down. Personally, I like to give it another cinch and wrap it around, get all the Velcro. If I was to put it on the opposite way and pull it away from my body, I can't cinch it all the way down in one pull, and then I have to let go of the strap and kind of toss it over. And when I grab that and pull it, it flips the windlass on the back of my arm. And you'll see it when we start doing them. We split the group up, we'll start doing them. If you haven't seen that, you'll start seeing that. So with the tensioning ribbon, where we're at right now, when I start turning this, do you see what's happening with the tensioning ribbon? It's twisting. It's twisting. And that's only like a half a turn. My arms are so jacked up, I'll probably get another turn on it. So I want to lock it in. So how tight are we making it? Yeah, and it hurts. And if it doesn't hurt, it's probably not working. And it hurts really bad. But it's good stuff. That is fast. If you do those steps, cinch it down, tighten the windlass, lock it in, you're done. Now, if I was in a hostile, like a care under fire situation, I was behind cover, and I got to this point, and I called threat right now, is the bleeding controlled? Is the bleeding controlled? It is. So if I went back to the gun right now, I could engage or attempt to mitigate or, take care of the threat. And then when I did that, I could reholster, whatever, situation's a little safer, then I can finish it off. Does that make sense? I don't want you to get in the habit of doing the tourniquet to here and being like, I'm done. That's not what we're gonna do. But I want you to think through this. If the bleeding's controlled right here, don't try to finish this off if I call, and you go back to the gun. We grab this strap, and I like giving it a little quarter turn and run it right underneath that C-clamp. Does everybody see that? This has to be locked in. And we know if you're not tightening it because the little thing pops out of there. It's gotta be tight. We get this strap under there, so this Velcro is exposed. We put that time tab over. It's like an additional little safety that holds the strap in and everything. Call time. When we do them throughout the next 3 days, I want you to call time every time you complete the tourniquet. It's a muscle memory thing. I want you to, yes, in the field situation, we want to document the time. We teach law enforcement and fire rescue and anybody with a radio, security guards, government agencies, hey, call it in, tourniquet applied. Dispatch is documenting that right there, because I can tell you right now, I don't have a Sharpie on me. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna try to, in this situation, write this time on. That is the proper way. We want to document the time, but it doesn't always happen that way. That's just reality. So this helps because Velcro sticks to everything, helps it from coming back out of here. If it's on the leg and we have to drag this patient to a safer location, okay? But that windlass, that feels good. That windlass rod in the tensioning ribbon, as I twist that, it's the only tourniquet that tightens circumferentially, right? So the whole tourniquet, that whole tensioning ribbon is doing this. And that's why it's like so fast and effective. It's really good, really works well. If I took my belt off and I wrapped it around your leg right now, I don't care how much tension I put on it, I might be able to get the bleeding slowed down or even stopped if I'm holding it and I'm doing right here in this intense moment, right? But I gotta figure out a way to, how do I hook this belt up? Most belts don't have a hole down, past that certain point, and all these, and then we try to tie it off and we lose all that pressure. So a lot of other tourniquets function like a belt. It's just a strap with a hook, and even if it has a windlass, when you start twisting that windlass, the majority of the pressure is right at where the windlass is or where the buckle is. or 1 or 2 inches away from that. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you were, let's say you carry one tourniquet and you were going to use your belt. If you were going to use your belt, you would want to place the buckle over where the closest place, like where the vessel is closest to the surface of the skin, where there's less muscle tissue. I could roll up a piece of gauze or roll up a t-shirt, place it right here and put the buckle of the belt right over that point and drive that pressure right over the vessel that's going to push it right against the bone. Does that make sense? I just want you to understand, that's the concept. We're trying to take the skin, the fatty tissue, and the muscle and push it all together and compress the blood vessel against the bone. That's what we're trying to do on the arms and legs, okay? So overall, pretty simple concept. And like I said, that's why a cravat or triangular bandage with a pair of trauma shears, slide it in there and twist them, it works really well. It's not as pretty and it doesn't work quite as fast, but it works. It will get you the tourniquet effect. How long are we supposed to leave these on for? Right, so in the civilian side, we talk about 2 hours is the number they like. Don't leave it on any longer than 2 hours. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the wound packing and pressure dressings. Military, 4 hours, no more than 4 hours. In most cases, I don't know of any documented cases where, oh my gosh, the tourniquet is why the person lost their arm or leg. It is usually the damage from the injury or infection. A big delay in getting antibiotics on board or something like that. That is where a lot of these amputations come from. Not, oh, you put the tourniquet, on the arm and they lost their arm because the tourniquet was left on. I think there was 1 or 2 cases of a tourniquet being left on from from Afghanistan or something, or Iraq, all the way back to Germany. Now, we're talking about severe blast injuries. They weren't keeping their legs anyway, but just want you to understand that, that 2 hours is a long time unless you're out hunting in the woods. They just had a severe alligator attack down in Florida, and it took, I forget what the time frame was. One of the guys was on the call that I was talking to the other day, and they had to send like an airboat out there and everything, but there was a big delay. It was not over 2 hours until he got treatment, but there's ways, when we do the wound packing, we'll talk about that. I want to show you the leg. Is everybody pretty familiar with the arm applying the cat tourniquet? Has anybody never applied it? Okay, good. Okay, good. So that's what I wanted to know. So the cat tourniquet is in this configuration. And really any commercial grade tourniquet you use is going to be some type of configuration like this. And what I was telling you is for the arm application, self-application, if I grabbed it out of my kit and I'm going to put it on my left arm, I like grabbing it like this. I want to get to the point where I don't have to look at it, because that also helps me if I'm in a hostile situation. I can flip this with my thumb. Does that make sense? And if I'm going to put it on my left arm, I haven't looked yet. I'm not saying I don't have to, but I'm watching my threat. I got shot and I'm looking, I'm scanning my area. I grab this tab and see, because I could flip that tab with my thumb, that set me up for success on having the red arrow pointing to the center of my body. And then I would just continue with my application. Okay? If I was doing that with my left arm, applying it on my right, be the same situation. I would grab this, if I keep it in a tourniquet holder, whatever it may be, I grab this tourniquet out. If I can't feel that, like if I have it set up backwards and I can't feel the end of that, I can just flip it around in my hand. I could have my weapon out still, or if my arm's injured and I can't, I'm behind cover. As soon as I get to that point and I can flip that tab, this is like my technique, I didn't invent it, but I prefer this. And if you practice it like this all the time, you won't even have to think about it. You'll just do it every time like this. I go to put it on my right arm. You see how I'm setting myself up for success? The right arrow is going to the center of my body, so I can pull one time and tighten it down. We need to do the extra little cinch, wrap the Velcro around, and I can glance real quick and make sure that I'm doing everything right. Doesn't matter which way I turn the windlass. I'm high and tight. I'm going to tighten it until the bleeding stops. Make sure we lock it into the C-clamp. Quarter turn, so that strap's out of the way. time, and I'm good to go. Now, for a long time now, it's getting better and better. A lot of law enforcement, I would see this constantly on law enforcement on their belt. They would carry the tourniquet like this. Instead of having that dog-eared, they'd have it like this. And it would be like this. And they liked it like that because the little loop when it was dog-eared would get caught on things, you know, because they got so much stuff on there. The problem is, if I grab this and I go to put this on, when I get to that point, I only have one hand, and I'm going to sit here and believe it or not, although this seems stupid, you think you could just grab it and rip it open, it's an extra step. And in a stressful environment where you got shot and you're losing blood, you don't have a lot of time, you don't want to sit here going, you know, trying to get this Velcro off. It's an extra step. Does that make sense? So it's much better to have that thing dog-eared, okay? When we're training, we're really not supposed to use our operational tourniquets, right, for training. Not saying you can't put the dang thing on once or twice here and there, but it stretches them out. Every time you crank that thing down, it stretches them out. So when we're doing the training, after each time we do these tourniquets, you're going to see that that tensioning ribbon's going to be stretched out, and there's going to be a lot of slack in it like that, right? I see a lot of people teaching this stuff, and they never talk about resetting the tourniquet when you're training. If I don't reset this and I just, you know, run it back through here and I put it on again, I'm going to be spinning this thing 10, 11 times. That is not how the tourniquet is supposed to function. So what we do is after each application, grab both ends, and if you watch, if I stretch it out, you see how that takes the slack out of there? See how there's no slack in that tensioning ribbon now? So it gets it back to as close as possible to resetting it, and then we just make the loop. See that? 6 or 8 inches, whatever you think 6 or 8 inches is. You have your loop. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we don't want to run this all the way around because it won't fold up quite as easy, okay? And then I just take the C-clamps and kind of point them up to the sky and let this fold just like that on itself. There are several different ways to do it. There's a couple companies out there that teach putting a little handle on it. Me personally, I like keeping it simple because if I approach somebody else and they have a cat tourniquet on them or another tourniquet, if it's set up a different way, it might take me a minute to figure out, right? I like it set up. Most people take it out of the package and put it on their gear, and that's how it will be set up. So if you run up and have to use somebody else's tourniquet or somebody tosses you a tourniquet, it's not going to be like, you know, rocket science trying to figure out how to use it. Is there any questions on what we've covered so far this morning? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
You talked about not using a same tourniquet for training that you would use, you know, day-to-day use, just to have one, because it would stretch it out. I mean, could you apply it, but just not crank it down? So long as you get used to, you know, going through it yourself.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, hey, you do it a couple times. Yes, get familiar with it. The blue ones are the same price. I never used to buy the blue ones because the blue ones were more expensive. And it aggravated me. As a company, I go through a ton of tourniquets, and I'm like, why am I paying $4 more for a blue one? Well, we don't sell as many of them. So finally, the price went, you know, they're all the same now. So I order blue ones just to help us distinguish between them. But what I would recommend, you know, is get another one and write training on one of them. And you're right, absolutely. The biggest thing that you don't want to do is sit there cranking the windlass down as tight as possible every time on the one that you're carrying all the time, your operational one. Does that make sense? Because that tensioning ribbon will get stretched out, and it will require more and more turns. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
We're not worried about the tension ribbon not working. It just requires more time, which is suboptimal.
Yeah, it's just like like a lot of these have been, I can't even tell you, you know, how many times. And then when we use them in the field, we probably throw away, you know, 5 to 7 tourniquets a month because they just get so damaged and stretched out and they won't even work anymore. And you know, we have to wash them at some point if we use them with the fake blood and things. Yep.
Is there any easy way to know when one's done?
So that's a great question. There's no expiration date on the tourniquet, right? Now, obviously if you use it and it's got blood on it, or if you use it and it goes off with a patient, you know, it's like a fire and forget. You know, you use it and it's gone, and you need to get another one. The biggest issue we ran into with them is in the environments we were in, we would have them heavyweight rubber band. We'd put a heavyweight rubber band and we'd have 1 or 2 on our vest. So the extreme temperature, extreme cold, extreme hot, Afghanistan, Iraq, you know, water, dust, you would get to a point in 2 months where you could grab this and you could start tearing it. That's how dried out they'd get. So if you're using it in a maritime environment, like offshore, we do a lot in the offshore, like austere medicine environment. So we try to keep them inside the Pelican cases and things like that. But you just got to keep an eye on it. If you're using it in an environment, that's the environmental issues is the biggest thing. You just got to keep an eye on it. When you think, ooh, it's getting kind of rough, write training on it, use that one for your training one and buy a new one. I'm going to demonstrate real quick the leg before we move to the next section. And if you guys can't see, just come up real quick. It's pretty simple. I just like demonstrating it for you because I know what most people are going to do with the leg. So I personally don't like the technique of I'm going to loop it and put my leg in. Usually when we have severe bleeding on the lower extremities, it's because the bone was involved, right? Whether it was that traffic accident, I told you open femur fracture, somebody else had a traffic accident, they applied one on. There's bone involvement. It is extremely painful. The bone ends are extremely sharp. And if you start grabbing that leg and moving it around and I'm conscious, I'm definitely going to take a swing at you. We've had patients in fire rescue. We had a piece of granite slab fall on the guy's pelvis, and it was kind of like flowing out. There was about 1.5 inch, 2 inch hole, and it was just flowing out. And the crew that worked it, they packed it and everything. Well, what do you think happened when they started pushing their fingers and gauze down in the hole of this guy's pelvis? He's friggin' going nuts. So they had to hold him down. Eventually they gave him medication. You're not gonna have that option. Somebody's gonna have to hold him down or he's gonna die. You know, if you go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, you don't want me to do it. No, they don't know what they're, he's going through all kinds of stuff. He doesn't realize he's gonna probably be dead in 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, right? So when we do the leg, one of the big things we have to do is worry about stuff in our pockets. We usually, the rule of thumb is go over 1 layer of clothing. I've done it with bunker gear for firefighters. It's very difficult to get bleeding controlled over the bunker gear because it's so thick. So if you're talking about heavy winter weight clothing and things like that and thick jackets and thick pants, you're gonna have to try it out. If you wear stuff like that for hunting, I would put a dang tourniquet on and make sure that I could cut the circulation off, right? Because you wanna know if this happens, cut this jacket off me. Or it's really expensive, don't cut it off, try to get it off me, don't cut it. But so on the leg, I'm not quite as light as I used to be, so if I break this table, yeah. So on the leg, what I like to do is we're still gonna, what's our position? High and tight. I like opening the tourniquet up. I'm gonna take the end, there's usually a natural void under the knee here. I'm gonna slide it right there. I don't have to manipulate this leg that is already possibly mangled, right? Or damaged. I've had people say, teaching people, it doesn't matter, their leg's already messed up anyway. Well, so you want we have a list of the patients in the Parkland shooting and all these shootings that we look at. Bilateral fractured femurs on this like 17-year-old girl because she took 2 5.56 rounds to the thighs. And you're telling me if she was conscious, you're okay walking up and grabbing her feet and just lifting those legs up? That's not cool. I don't want to tell you the names that I would call somebody like that. That's ridiculous. We have to think further than just, I'm just trying to save their life. Well, what if those bone ends are so sharp, it creates more pain and possibly more damage? What if right now only the vein is severed And then we lift up that leg and now we sever the artery. She'll be dead in 45 seconds because she's already been bleeding. So this is a better technique. If it was a full amputation, yeah, loop it right over the amputation because you're not going to cause any more damage. Does that make sense? And also, believe it or not, when you go to try to loop it over somebody else's leg, depending on how damaged everything is, there might be bone ends sticking out. It might be difficult to run the tourniquet up their leg. If you open it up, you go run underneath. I like grabbing close up to the leg, to the extremity, and work it up. You can put a little bit of pressure up or just slide it up like this so we go high and tight. If you saw the video for the law enforcement, when he applied it, the guy was rolled over, but what happens is if you put this tourniquet through and you try to slide it up like that, a lot of times the Velcro gets caught together or it flips over. What happened to him is when he put it under, he ended up like this. Did you guys notice that? You could see the white writing, it said CAT on the back of the tourniquet he was using. That's why he couldn't get it on the first time, it flipped over. And that's just, I mean, he did to me, they did a great job with it, but I'm just saying, being nitpicky so you guys understand, that's what's happening, and that's what happens a lot. So it's better once you get it under there, look at it and keep control of it and go high and tight. And then on the leg, usually we have a lot more muscle. Not me, but some of you guys will have a lot more muscle. And when we pull this tourniquet, we don't just want to go like that, because now we're going to have to turn the windlass several more times to tighten it down. And we also don't want to do just 1 or 2 inches of Velcro. If I only do that and I start cranking this down, what's going to happen? That Velcro is going to pop. So when we get on the leg, I want you to pull as much up as you can and then trace it. Get as much Velcro as you can. And then we're going to start tightening. The better, and you're going to have to go a couple more turns.
And it is much more
Yeah, lock it in, high and tight, tighten it until the bleeding's controlled. Time. And if you've seen videos where people put on a tourniquet, then they walk around and they finish, it's not tight enough. I mean, this applies so much pressure. You can't just bebop around with this thing on. It hurts like crazy, and when you try to get up, you've got so much tension and pressure on the vessels and the nerves. It's not feasible to just walk around like this. And if you had bones sticking out, you're gonna be walking around anyway. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on the leg or the arm? And you guys are gonna get to do it plenty, we're getting ready to do the hands-on right now. To be honest with you, it really doesn't matter on the lower extremity, especially if you're putting it on yourself or somebody else, right? But the one thing that does happen is I find that if you do it the opposite way, either way you do it, what I want you to do is try to get that windlass on the top of the leg. If the windlass is right here in your crotch, it's really hard to twist. If it's way over here against the ground, you'll be digging in the dirt, or if you're on the pavement, you will not be able to tighten it. Okay, so try to get that windlass right up on the top of the leg or just off to the side. And it sounds crazy, like I'm getting this crazy thing, I'm trying to put on a tourniquet. That's why I need you to practice it, go slow and smooth and use the technique, and you'll put it on the same way every single time. So, yeah, that's a good point. Remember I said, so you can't have anything in the pockets. I ran into this overseas one of the first times I ever used it, is I put a tourniquet on, cat tourniquet on, and I went right over the nylon strap for a drop-down holster. And I couldn't get it to tighten down properly. So if there's enough slack, go underneath the drop-down holster, right? Underneath the strap. If you can't, and it's your own holster, hit that. If you got 1 or 2 fast tech buckles or whatever, you need to unclip them and move that thing to the side. Okay? Do I have any law enforcement in here? Okay, because some law enforcement, the body armor they wear, it comes down and protects their upper arm. That there's like a Velcro or a quick release. They have to undo that before they put on the tourniquet. So there's just some things, depending on what gear you're wearing or using, that's what we need to do, okay?
Sorry guys, I didn't get to introduce myself. My name's Joel Gupton. Spent the last 16 years as a Special Forces medical sergeant. Don was actually one of my first senior, I believe, on a Special Forces detachment. I spent a lot of time doing prolonged field care, austere medicine, remote medicine. So if any of you guys are hikers or offshore fishermen or anything like that, we teach a lot of that stuff with D-Dey. What we're gonna do is we're gonna break out. So give me 15 is gonna stay in here with Don, and then 15 of us are gonna go next door over here, and I'm gonna talk about hemostatic dressings, pressure dressings, things like that.
Come from Chicago a couple days ago, and it was like feet of snow, blowing cold, and we're down here now in sunny Texas at Black Tree Ranch. This is one of the coolest places we've shot yet. Been all over the country, and this is a dynamite place. You guys keep an eye out for it. We're happy to be down here. We're happy to be with Jay from Disciples of Iron. And we're out here, we're gonna do some fun stuff. I decided, just after putting these clothes on, I kind of felt like stronger, faster, better. It's basically like I'm on some type of like steroidal speed / like protein drink, something like Shinobi drink, you know? So we're gonna load up some of Super Vel's ammo. We've got their Plus P, 1,313 feet per second, 38 special, and some of their 90 grain, 1,500 feet per second. We're gonna do our fun one-arm push-up drill and see if the Disciples of Iron clothing makes us better, stronger, faster, like Jay tells all of his customers. Here we go, range hot. We'll start with the 38. Pat Mack, who is Pat Mack? Never met that guy. Okay, so there was a couple misses there, and I'm gonna blame it on the over pressure of the Super Vel. I'm not like manly enough to handle it. I'm gonna switch over to the Wilson Combat, try that out. Switch hands. Okay, here we go. Decock. All right. Perfect. At 38, man, I was having a hard time with that. Somebody else want to try? Yeah, man. And go.
Okay.
There's a lot of them. What'd you think of that Super Vel?
Awesome.
Yeah, stuff moves.
Yep.
Super Vel, super awesome.